welcome to Traveling Inside Out. This is Alina, your host. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the podcast that explores the world within and out. And thank you for subscribing to Traveling Inside Out, wherever you get your podcast from, being Spotify or Apple Podcast or whatever. However, thank you. Good morning, Andra.
Hi, Alina. Good morning to you. And well, it's afternoon for me again, but it's very good to be on the show.
So it's been a while since I had you over because I had a longer break, as I said in the previous episode. We were meant to be back in October, and then I needed a longer break. So before we get into anything, how were the last 2 months since we talked last time?
Oh, yeah, they were quite packed for me as well. With travel and with COVID, I got COVID for the third time,
Oh boy.
mainly because of traveling. So, when you're in an airport and an airplane, it's kind of tough to avoid viruses. But I'm all good now. So, yeah, back to the regular routine, I guess. And we've had quite a nice warm autumn so far. And in October, it was my birthday, and I was able to do a nice birthday hike, which is, well, it has been pretty rare until the last few years. So yeah.
Because you mean because the weather was on your birthday was not that pleasant? Is this what you mean?
Like usually yes, in like
Mm.
late October the weather is really not great, but in the last 3-4 years, it's been quite nice and sunny. I had a nice lunch with my parents outdoors. We were sitting out on a terrace in like late
Mm-hmm.
October. That's super unheard of in Romania.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know it is climate change. So
It's kind of the same. I'm the opposite because my birthday is in spring in March, so it used to be quite snowy and really not great. And lately, I've been having like bloom trees on my birthday, which is like a new thing because
yeah.
usually like the everything is still dead basically on my birthday, but not anymore. Not anymore. I'm saying that
Right.
because obviously I moved from Iceland to United States, so Iceland things were still dead in March, don't get me wrong. However, here the climate in New York is kind of similar with what we have in Romania. So that's what I'm comparing with, not with Iceland, because Iceland is just something completely
It's a
different.
different planet. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So as we talked last time, I need to mention two things. We didn't manage to read the book. We will read the book. We mentioned we're
Mostly
gonna
me,
read
and I will. Yeah.
my issue. I read it too early, so I don't remember that well. So I will need to reread it. I need to
And I
reread
didn't
it.
read it at all. So, well,
I
I
didn't
read
take.
it in like high school.
I didn't. I should have taken notes, which I didn't. So next time, we'll see. We'll see how it's gonna go, but we will read it at some point. We were talking about The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. We didn't do that. However, last time we were talking about Nepal and your experience in Nepal, and then we said that this time around we're gonna talk about your experience in Bali. Before anything, I do have to say my preconception because I have it. And I hate that I have it, but I have it. In general, what I've heard from people going to Bali to like not just to go to Bali for like uh, 3 days or like a traveling, but to go there and go to some classes or go to learn something. Most of the time, people coming from Bali, they shift completely their mindset. They shift completely the way that they talk, like the vocabulary is changed. So in my mind, I have this preconception that people going to Bali, they are a little bit like brainwashed or like something is happening there. And I'm just being very honest. And I was a little bit worried at the time, which I never told you, putting you now on the spot, that I hope from the bottom of my heart that Andrea is not gonna get into what I've noticed online because I didn't have like close friends going to Bali before, or at least not in this kind of manner, I would say. So I had this preconception, and obviously it didn't change your vocabulary since you came
Oh,
back.
good.
So that's great. No, because like people go there and then they just talk about like the soul in a different way, and like the
Oh, yeah.
mind, and like things like that. And I'm like, okay, but like why? Like I understand that you might be experiencing new things, but like why are you changing completely the way that you talk? Like you don't talk about yourself anymore. It's only either the ego or the whatever, like the it was just like I just cannot. And in my mind, that's fake. So that's where it's coming from. So in my mind, I'm like, I feel like they think that this is how it's supposed to be. So I perceiving this as fake. Now a lot of people are gonna come for me. I'm ready. It's whatever. I'm just saying that was my preconception, which I'm aware as a preconception without me going and experiencing, it might be very much wrong. So I'm fully aware of this. Now, I'm curious for you to tell me what, first and foremost, why did you decide to go to Bali?
I'm gonna start with a question, and I'm gonna ask you, like, so you don't feel like I really changed that much, and not in this like
Not in a
negative
bad
way?
way. Not
Yeah,
in a bad way.
completely losing my former personality. That's good. That's reassuring. Um, and before I answer your question about why going to Bali, I am going to add a bit to this this thing that you just said, because it's an actual thing, like the way people talk. And there is there is obviously this wave of like new age stuff and people, and like when they immerse in that environment, they just feel like, oh, this new identity of being a spiritual person suits me now, and this is what I want to be, and this is what I want to project. And there is a term for that. I recently learned, not in Bali actually, like a friend of mine was telling me that there is a term now for that kind of discourse and vocabulary. It's called absolutish, like English, like whatever, but it's absolutish because you speak in these absolute terms, like this whole thing about, yeah, like, oh, it's the ego, we live in this illusion world. And it's, I mean, I don't want to make fun of that, because obviously there is a philosophy behind it, right? And there's
Yeah.
if like if you read the Vedas, and if in Buddhism, in many religions, obviously there
Hmm.
is a philosophy behind all that, this illusion world that we live in, and enlightenment and all of that. But I think the problem is when people just take, like, the superficially, they pick some things, they
Yeah.
don't understand what they're talking about. Even I don't know everything, so that's why I try to like keep away from terms that I don't fully understand.
Hmm.
And they use those terms in their day-to-day discourse, and they just sounds like they just sound like assholes most of the time, because they want to sound like, oh, I'm better than everybody else because I use these terms.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that is the problem, and that's also, in to keep the conversation in the same absolutish term. This is also like an ego thing. You suddenly you go there to become a better person and more spiritual, but then you get attached to this spiritual identity, and you create this new thing for you, and to make yourself feel better. And that is the hypocrisy, and I think that's what bothers you, and that's what bothers me as well about this whole discourse, like, oh, suddenly
Hmm.
I'm so much better than everybody else because I spent a week in Bali. Like, come on, it doesn't
Hmm.
work that way.
Yeah. And
um
yeah. Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
not that it's not possible, of course, but it not because you went there for like a few classes and yoga, and suddenly you're so enlightened and so spiritual. There's so much more to that. But again, so yeah, there's a term for that, and it's called absolutish, apparently, and I find it hilarious.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, like last month a friend was telling me about this, and I felt like, yeah, it's really eye-opening. And it helps you, it helps keep yourself grounded. It was like, okay, I'm going into that direction. I should I should try
Hmm.
to keep myself in get a reality check. And also for me as well, when I last year I was really thinking of going to, like, taking a break. I probably
Yeah.
mentioned this before. I
Hmm.
wanted to have some time off from work, from everything. I was kind of burnt out.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to just take, I mean, sure, I was sorry, I was practicing yoga before and meditation. I started in Romania. I think I mentioned that in our
Mhm.
last episode. And I didn't want to just go and do some like regular backpacking. I said, you know, I want my time off to be more like, again, I'm going to go into these cliches and into this, you know, absolutist thing. I, you know, like self discovery. It sounds like shit, but I wanted it to be more than just, you know, go ahead, go do some sightseeing, take some pictures and come back, because I had done that before and it wasn't enough, because when I come back I feel like, oh, I have to go back to work again, oh, I have to go back to my regular life. And I wanted to kind of, you know, to somehow use this to get a bit deeper into something else. I don't know what it was, but
Ex
anyway,
Can it
so
be maybe explore the inside out?
explore the inside out. Yes, to not use cliches. Yes, actually, to use the outside world, to change the scenery in order
Mhm,
to, you know, to to learn more, and if I can learn more about this, the spiritual practices that I'm
mhm.
interested in, why not, right? So
Yeah.
for for yoga, I had basically two options that I was interested in. It was either India or Bali, because I, you know,
Mhm,
I did extensive research and I was wondering what
mhm,
to do, and maybe a yoga retreat. But I said, I don't want to just do like yoga for a week and then leave. I really want to learn more about like
the
the yogic
actual practice.
philosophy. Yeah, the
Mhm,
actual
mhm,
practice, the theory behind it. Why do we do certain things? Because it's not like you know, when you just go to a studio, you just like do down dog, you do this, you go back
mhm,
home, and that's fine. Like I wanted to go deeper into. I really wanted to gain some knowledge into that. So because of that, most of the programs that I found that included this were the yoga teacher trainings.
mhm,
I never actually wanted to become a yoga teacher. I still feel like I don't know enough to actually teach people. But it was the curriculum for these yoga teacher trainings. The curriculum was comprehensive enough as to where it went deeper into, you know, like yogic philosophy, anatomy, things like that. And I was
mhm,
like, yeah, this is, I want to learn this. This sounds really good. And I don't want to just do a holiday. I want to do, you know, like a learning, studying holiday, if you will.
yeah.
And because back then I wasn't with India, I felt like it has to be a more, it has to be a different kind of journey. First
Mhm,
of all, I don't really want to go to India on my own. I also, this may be a preconception, but you know, I've heard many stories
mhm.
about, you know, solo female travelers. Some of them had a really good experience, others not so much. And I always felt like if I'm gonna go, I don't want to go by myself.
Mhm.
And second of all, if I do go to India, I want to take more time just for India, because it's such a huge place. I have good friends
Yes,
there.
yes.
Yeah, so like I would like to take more time, at least a month and a half, just for India. So, and Bali had been on my list for a long time. And I have to admit, it was also the algorithms, because I had research. I had started doing this research, right, to find yoga schools and yoga classes. Instagram obviously showed me sponsored ads for different yoga schools, but one of them really stood out because it had nice pictures. It had, you know, it just seemed like it was nice. And I
Mhm,
visited the website, and they had also meditation in the curriculum. They had anatomy, like I was saying. They had
mhm.
yoga philosophy. They had beach yoga one day. They had ice baths. So like it seemed like it was very interesting in the sense that it was, you know, it was diverse. Other
Mhm,
yoga schools didn't really go so much into meditation, or they didn't really go too much, they didn't even have anatomy classes at all, and I feel like that's very important.
mhm,
So I chose this particular school because I felt like it was going to give me in-depth knowledge, which was
mhm.
true. Now, because of all the pictures that I had seen from Bali and
Yeah,
yoga schools and everything else, I was
sure.
like, yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna go there, try to not expect too much, because it might just be Instagram yoga, right? And the
Yeah,
people that
sure.
are going to go there, that might just be Instagram yogis, people,
Hmm.
especially, like women practitioners who do all sorts of fancy poses just to post on Instagram, and that's it. And for me,
Hmm.
that's like the physical part is really not so important. Like I was saying, it's more about like the scientific and the spiritual thing behind it. So I was like, you know what, I'm prepared to find that kind of you know that kind of approach, that like more superficial, not so much, even though the material is going in depth, at least I have that, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to expect a lot, because it is what it is, because it's Bali also.
Hmm.
And it is true, there are many people in Bali that have, this kind of that are into this new age current, um, that do a lot of things but don't fully understand why they're doing it. They're also really good people and really good practitioners and really good teachers. I found really good and valuable ones there as well. So there's a whole lot of there's an entire spectrum where it depends on what you're looking for and what you're lucky to find and whatever. So I went there with some preconceptions as well. The second preconception, and this was completely demolished, I have to admit, and
Yeah.
it is good that it was like that. When I got there, I realized that we were 40 women in the so like the 200-hour yoga teacher training that I did was divided into two groups, and the
Yeah.
two groups each had like 20 women, and we were
Hmm.
all women students. Now apparently it's not always the case. Sometimes there's a few guys in there as well. Obviously it's more women most of the time, but it was only women students. Sure, we had some male teachers, but it was only women. And because I went with these preconceptions, like, oh yeah, like these girls, that they were, most of them were like younger than me, like really fit. They had been practicing yoga for ages, super flexible. And I was like, yeah, of course, like many of these people are just going to be like posing all the time for Instagram and things like that. So I don't know how I'm going to, am I going to make friends with anybody? Am I going to really relate to anybody in the next 3 weeks here? Because I'm not like that. Right.
Hmm.
And so I kind of was judging the shit out of people just because they were women and they were, fit and good looking.
Yeah.
Um, so it turned out actually that I made some really good friends. And most of the people that were there, even the ones that did actually have like an Instagram, like an Instagram account focusing on yoga and yoga poses and things like that, when you had conversations with them one-on-one, they were actually really kind and really nice people. And
Hmm.
actually they were super super sweet, right?
Hmm.
Many of these girls. And we had some sessions that were focusing, because we were all women, obviously it was women's circles and like women, yin yoga for women and things like that. And it was actually very nice because it was such a soft and loving energy. And we shared so many things because we were all women. We were talking about how we were not going to shave our legs in the next 3 weeks because like who fucking cares? We're all women
Hmm.
there. So it was actually very nice for me and very refreshing to discover that, yeah, like most of the people that I related to there, they actually had a lot of depth and kindness in them. So I guess in that sense, I'm super glad that I chose Bali, because the school was good. The um, the people there, that like my fellow students were, yeah, like very very nice, super sweet. um Most of the teachers, they had very good knowledge to share, and I felt very safe in Bali. I actually felt safe. I
Okay.
spent
Yeah, that's important.
yeah, like before the school started, I felt I had a few days on my own to just go to the beach and visit a
Hmm.
few things. um and everybody just felt so nice and helpful. And I mean, sure, because you're a tourist, you pay a bit more, but I didn't feel like somebody was trying to specifically rip me off. It was just
Oh,
like,
okay.
yeah, like it wasn't like, oh, she doesn't exactly know where she's going, so I'm just gonna like charge her double. No, they were like,
Mm-hmm.
this is the price. If you want to go,
Yeah,
sure. So yeah, I was paying the tourist prices, but not. I
crazy. Yeah,
it
I
didn't feel
understand.
like it. Yeah. So I'm super happy that I chose Bali for that. And Bali is a beautiful island. It's paradise, but of course it has huge problems with
People
trash
in it.
and people, and with our trash from the Western world that
Yeah.
goes there and then just washes up on their beaches. It's a huge problem, that one, yes. But
Hmm.
the island itself and the people were so warm, basically. So I'm happy that I chose that.
I just wanted to say something regarding when you mentioned the shaving or not shaving of the legs. I've noticed, I don't know if you can tell me anything like that in Romania. This summer, I have seen a lot more women with unshaved legs and or armpits, like on the subway, uh, and stuff like that, which to each their own, like to each their own. I personally don't like it because like I can't properly put moisturizer on. It's like I can't like uh, but I do have to say that in general I was shaving before when I would see a guy, and not to get into the other cliche like I'm married, I don't have to shave anymore. But sometimes I am not, like I'm not always 100% shaved, and my husband is okay with it. He's not shaming me because I have been shamed by a previous boyfriend because I wasn't properly shaved in some parts, and it
Wow.
felt like it's bothering me to the freaking day. So
Oh yeah.
um I fully get that, but I'm curious, have you noticed anything like that in Romania? uh,
To be honest,
I,
not really. I haven't. I mean, maybe um, it's maybe just a few people like not having like perfectly shaved armpits, but it's still not. It's still
no.
not. Yeah. For the most part, I think it's still a big thing to wax and
And that
shave.
another thing that I've noticed, going back to Iceland, is that because most of the women in Iceland they have blonde hair, they don't shave because they don't fully see that blonde hair. And I would see them when I would go to the swimming pool, and then I would get close to people, like you sometimes need to be close to be in a hot tub or whatever. And so that's when I would notice, and I'm like, oh damn, like you don't, but you can't tell, you really cannot tell.
Right.
So I was like, well, yeah, so it's now working for women who have like a darker hair because that's really fully like, I mean, yeah. So that's another approach. If you have really light colored hair, then you probably don't need to do it that much, unless the texture of it bothers you, and then that's another story.
True.
Um, okay, going back to Bali. Um, so you talked about what were your expectations and so on, and yeah, I also agree. When it's just women, there is a different energy, and it's not something I, I I don't, I probably, yeah, you just said that, but I feel like we are not led to believe, or maybe it's too much to say that, I don't know, that it is a change in the energy and so on when it's just women, and you just feel it, like I don't necessarily expect that, but then it's just a group of women, it's always like something different, and you do feel safer, or at least, yeah, that's how I feel as well. Let's not generalize completely, but like I feel that as well. There is a shift in the energy, and more like a cushion, like if I can say,
Yeah. No,
being
for sure.
in that kind of a group. Okay, so now just to um put it back in place, you went for 3 weeks, and it was October last year, right? I don't remember.
Yes.
Did it go all the way through November, or I don't
No,
remember exactly the
so I
dates?
actually left on on October 31st. So it was almost a year ago when I
Literally.
graduated. Um
Mm-hmm.
the training was about 3 weeks, and
Mm-hmm.
outside of that, I spent a few more days before and another extra day after. So all in all, I was there for about 4 weeks almost in Bali.
Mm-hmm.
But for most of that time, I was in the yoga school, so I didn't get to do a lot of sightseeing. But the place that we were in, that yoga school was in a complex, in a resort, I might say, outside of, close to Ubud, which Ubud is like the, the spiritual center, because it's the city that has, most yoga schools, most meditation centers and things like that, and it's where a lot of digital nomads go, but it's not close to the beach, so it's more like in the
Yeah,
jungle. And
more.
this
Mm-hmm.
resort was in the jungle basically, so
Mm-hmm.
it was very nice because it was very green. We could see a lot of animals all the time, lizards and geckos. The geckos were always in the room. For some reason, you always had a gecko like
Yeah.
on the ceiling, and in the yoga space, in the yoga shala. Um, but it was quite nice to be
Okay.
there where it was so green.
Yeah. So I'm curious if you can tell me, just choose a random day and tell me like how the schedule looked from the morning to the evening. Just take me through, just like a random day.
Mhm.
When were you waking up? How did it start? And all the way to when you went to sleep.
I think hopefully I remember everything because it was, like I said, a year ago. But
Yeah.
I mostly woke up around 5:30. We started yoga practice around 6.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah, there were like minor changes in the schedule depending on the day, but yeah, like a regular day, maybe we would start the yoga practice in the morning around 6, and then we would do a meditation practice, and then maybe breakfast around 8:39. After that, around 10:30 until lunch, we had a class, either yoga philosophy or anatomy or something else, or a workshop on a specific yoga pose. After lunch, we had like maybe an hour break to do some practice on our own, or to just rest, or to read, or to whatever. After that, we had again asana practice. Um, After the asana practice in the afternoon, we would have a module for teaching. So basically, how to teach yoga, how to give cues to students, how to, different types of yoga for different kinds of audiences, for people with, for traumatic responses, for pregnant women, for, it was quite informative. I mean, sure, you can really go into a lot of detail, but we did that. Um, then we had dinner, maybe around 6. After dinner, we had again meditation practice. And after that, maybe around 8 something, we would finish. Around 9, everybody was like in bed dead, because we basically we wake up in the morning very early, and we did so many physical exercises, and like mentally you were engaged all the time, so you were basically dead at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want you to tell me now, during the time being there and then maybe soon after, what were the main things that really left an impression over you from the whole experience? Because I want to compare it with 1 year later, how you see it. But try to go back into when you were there. If there was something that really left like a big impression over you, or that was very challenging, it can be either way. And then soon after. And when I say soon after, I mean when you came back from Romania, like soon after when you returned back to Romania, not soon after you left Bali.
um I remember that I specifically, because when you're in that very intense schedule of like
Mhm.
yoga, physical practice, asana practice every day, meditation every day, twice a day in the morning, evening,
Mhm.
um, doing breathing exercises, pranayama, whatever. I felt like this discipline really had an effect on my body, first of all, and then on
Mm.
my mind as well. So, on my body, I felt like I never did, like some of these postures that I did because I did them every day, 2, 3 times a day. I had never done them better. My body was flexible, it
Mm.
was opening in some ways. I was like, you know, I can't actually, my body can do these if I just need the discipline of
Mm.
practicing and like doing it right. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna keep up and I'm gonna be so good. And like, my abs was just like nice and you could see like the muscles there.
Tight.
And I was like, oh, that's nice. I want to keep that up. But then I came back home and I kept it up for like 2 weeks and that's it. So
And
because
then that was it.
it's different when you wake up and you're like, oh, I have a ton of emails, oh, my cat wants food, oh, I have to do this and that. It's like, tomorrow, and tomorrow is the same. So I practice a lot more rarely now. So I felt like, my body was really, only because of the discipline, not because I had done something
Mhm.
super out of the ordinary, but because I was doing it and I was doing it correctly because, the instructors were there to correct me.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and second of all, on my mind, because all the meditation, there was another thing about meditation practice. What I usually do and what I usually did before was passive meditation, right? So where you just sit and you try to like go inwards, to not focus on the outside world, to try to not focus on your thoughts, to um focus on the breath, things like that. And there, the focus was a bit more on the active dynamic meditation practices where you would involve shaking and dancing, and then you would have a part where you sit in silence and in stillness. And for me, I was like, this is new for me. I don't know how, like, what's with the shaking. It kind of feels like we're, crazy people here. But it did work actually, because that release that you feel, and then the stillness that you add at the end of the practice, it just felt a lot more intense, after that, the
Mhm.
whole shaking and active practice that you did, the stillness at the end just felt more still somehow. So for me, that
Mhm.
was a surprise, actually, how you can, there is this active meditation technique, and how it works on the body. And again, I felt like, oh yeah, I should do more of this because it feels more powerful. But after coming back, doing it on my own, it just didn't feel the same. It's not, when you practice it in a group of people, the energy is different, like you're saying, and it kind of feels like, everybody around me is dancing and shaking, and I kind of do that. But then when I did it at home, I was like, it just doesn't feel the same. I'm like, yeah, I feel more comfortable when I'm on my own to just go back to my passive, still meditation. Um,
Mhm. May I
so I,
may I interrupt for a second?
yeah,
I'm just curious if, because you mentioned about the discipline that you had during the course, and so I'm curious, did they address on how to have this discipline at home when you live? Because as you were saying, it was so easy to follow when you don't have any other distractions, but then you are being back to the world when you have more responsibilities and so on. Did they ever address any of this, how to incorporate this into back home life, basically? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
yeah, for sure. And there is a module in, yeah, how to make this practice into a habit. But I mean, in the end, it's mostly about, try to do a bit every day, even if you don't feel like doing it for an hour. Do a shorter practice, do something that feels good. Try to listen to your body, because if
Hmm.
you do something and you're not really into it, it's not good for you. Try to be gentle with yourself. But yeah, I mean, another thing that they said is, and I haven't really done that, they said you should, even if you don't really want to be a teacher, don't let too much time pass after graduation, and go teach a class, even if it's for free with your friends, with family. Do this so you have the practice of teaching so you don't forget. Now, I did something, I did an online yoga nidra, which is more like guided meditation, not necessarily, but it's not, it's not physical practice. And I did like doing that, but I did not actually teach yoga to people.
Hmm.
And that, if I had been more into sharing what I learned there, and more into teaching people, I'm sure I would have kept the discipline of practicing myself as well. But
Hmm.
it's just more, I have to admit, I haven't been very good at it on my own.
You're just not there yet, I would say. Right?
It's
You
you
are
kind of,
just not. You are just not there yet.
for sure,
I would
for sure,
say. Yeah.
for sure. I
Um.
don't, I don't feel like I know enough to teach people confidently. I would know, I could teach what I know to people, and for beginners, it could be definitely enough in some contexts. But for me, I feel like I have to really master something before I can teach people. That's just me, and how I feel like it works for me. And for that specific reason, hopefully next year I can go and do some specialization courses, because I'm now looking into that.
Okay. Okay. Great. Because that was a question coming, but we're not there yet. As in, what's the next? What's coming?
Right.
But we're not there yet. Okay. So, um, that being said, I'm curious now to know. After, like, you've done the whole class, what was the one thing that you felt it changed, if anything changed in you? What was a thing or two or whatever that changed from that experience? Like, what was something that, and it, like, it changed and it still changed, not
Hmm.
something that changed for a short period of time, but like something that you really feel like it's stuck with you,
um
if there is anything. It cannot be
there is
anything. Like,
there is
I
for
don't want
sure.
you to improvise something right now.
No, there is for sure, and I'm just trying to pick one that was probably the most powerful. And I think it would be the connection that I feel towards other people, in the sense, and I will give you an example, because when I was there, I had some practice, some sessions where I just felt, I'm not super extroverted, I'm not super like, I don't, if people talk to me, I like talking to them, but I'm not a person to just like connect with everybody easily. um and there was one session where we had this, I don't know, we did a mantra chanting. It's basically, you sing the song, it's a mantra. It's basically just a little spiritual song that you keep singing.
Mhm,
It's also kind of a meditation, basically. And it was
mhm,
super nice because it's a simple line, and you repeat that over and over again. And in the beginning, of course, people didn't we didn't know it, but the more, it was repeated, and after 2 or 3 minutes, everybody could sing the words. And it just felt like all the voices, and like we were all women, right? So it was like 40 women, because in this one we were all together because it was just chanting. It was like at sunset, and like I said, we were in the jungle, and you could hear the nature sounds and this music, and we were all singing along. And at some point, all the voices were coming together, because everybody was starting to get used to the words, and everybody was kind of
mhm,
singing in the same rhythm and voice. And it just felt like all the voices are becoming one, and in the background, the insects, and like the grasshopper sounds or whatever there was there, it was kind of like melting into our voices. And I just started crying, like, oh my god, because it just felt like all the voices of nature and us, it was just becoming one, and we were all singing. It was so, like, I don't do that. I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? I don't do this thing, and I'm not on drugs. What is happening to me? But it just felt like I'm so connected to everybody around me, and not just the people that were singing, but everything, like, oh, like I said, the insects and the sounds of nature, that were all just coming together somehow. And I was like, that's very unusual for me, but it still felt nice. I felt very connected to everyone. And I know that experience stayed with me because earlier this year in summer, I went to another yoga retreat, and there was another mantra chanting experience. And again, I felt like everybody who was singing around me, I just felt like, oh, I'm so one with everybody around me just because of that. And it just felt again a very strong impression of like, oh, I'm connected. I'm not just one person alone. I like, we are all
Hmm.
one somehow. I know this is again a cliche, but it really felt like that. And I had never felt that before, that moment. But then after that, I started feeling it more and more often. I could connect with people that I wasn't even talking to necessarily. So, and ever since then, because of that, I am more prone to seeing people with more compassion somehow. Like when somebody's doing something and my first inclination is to be like, oh my God, what an asshole. I find myself thinking immediately, okay, maybe they're not an asshole. Maybe they're just doing their best. And this is really, it has been such a good thing for me because I don't keep the burden of anger with me so much. I'm like, you know what? They're just doing their best. This was their best. Whatever. Maybe it
Hmm.
wasn't. It wasn't great, but it was their best. Maybe they weren't trying to be an asshole to me, and it has been so liberating because of that.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Like it really sounds like it. Um, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I'm back in therapy and I'm doing a once per week session. And I think I told you this in our private conversation. After I think it was after the first session, I was like, oh my God, we are just all traumas walking among each other, unsolved traumas. um Basically. So and also it's like I've always had this, for many 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 years, that everybody has a story to tell, so we are just untold stories or undiscovered stories. um but the reality is that people have like horrible diseases and they are still like going to Target and do some shopping for their family. Like you really truly do not know what they are challenged with, because everybody's challenged with something. So yeah, I fully agree with what you're saying, and I was curious to see how is that translating into your day-to-day life. But like you already I was about to like, let me ask you, but then you actually explain. You got there without me needing to ask you. Um, so now I'm just curious to see if there's anything that you didn't like, if there was anything that was way too challenging, maybe too much outside of your comfort zone, or something that it didn't make sense and it's still like it didn't make sense at the beginning and it still didn't make sense at the end, or something that you just couldn't fully relate to, even though you said you had a preconception with women and it turned out not to be like that. But if there was anything at all during these 3 weeks slash 4 weeks in Bali.
Specifically to yoga or to the yoga school, yes, there are still things that I don't fully relate to, in the sense that it feels in many places, not just at yoga school, not just Bali, um, that when people think of yoga, they just think of, physical practice. We do asana practice, postures. This is the most important thing, and that's it. Um, and all the flows and everything that they do, it's nice, but it really just feels like there's too much focus on basically the workout when
Mhm.
and I'm not super interested in that. Obviously, I meditate every day, but I don't do physical practice every day. Like I said, I maybe do it like once
Mhm.
every 2 weeks. And obviously, yeah, because I'm not necessarily interested in that. I'm not saying it's bad. It's very good to do
Yeah.
the physical postures, but to me it feels like, yeah, the focus is a lot on that aspect. And maybe the yoga schools and the yoga studios offer that because people that's what the people are asking for,
How,
because
I mean, it's still a business. It's still a business at the end of the day, and
sure.
some marketing has to happen. I fully agree. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so people go, to Bali for that, so they're gonna get
Mhm.
that, because that's
Yeah.
that. And sure, if you can in the meantime also, like, put a little experience, like a spiritual experience here and there, or teach them about, like what's the yogic philosophy behind it, that's great. But
Mhm.
still, it feels like there's really not, the balance is still a lot more inclined towards the physical thing, which is, like I said, it's understandable to some extent. For
Mhm.
me, it was very surprising to see that, from fellow students, people who had been practicing yoga for years, for like 5, 6, 7 years, they had never heard of, like the 8 limbs of yoga, which is like
Mm.
pretty basic for me, because, but again, I had a very good yoga teacher at home who always goes into theory. It's like one of the basic things, right? And when they started teaching that in the yoga school, I was the only one to know these things, and they looked at me I was a nerd, and they're like, how do you know that? I was like, well, my teacher, he taught me that. And they were like,
Yeah.
in Romania? But like, how do they teach that in Romania? I'm like, well, I just have a good teacher. He studied in India, but I have, but there are people who practiced yoga for like 7 years. They could do headstands and like super
Mhm.
crazy difficult postures that I would not even ever try, because I am, I don't care. But they didn't know like the basic things, like, what are basically there are, norms of yoga, like how to conduct your life, how to, things like that,
Mhm.
which are like very basic, and they make a lot of sense. They're very logical, but people didn't know about it because nobody had told them about it. So for me, that's why I was, like I said, I went with this I kind of knew I wasn't going to find too much of that. I found a little bit,
Mhm.
but the things that I was
Mhm.
told, I already kind of knew, right? Because, like I said, I
Mhm.
already knew them
Y-
from home,
Yeah.
which was fine. But I would have liked more of that as well.
Mhm.
Um, then about Bali itself, especially Ubud and that place, it was very, very crowded. The traffic
Mm.
is just horrible. Um, Anywhere you have to go for 10 kilometers, it takes like an hour. Everything is just bad in that way. The plastic pollution is horrible. When it rains a lot, because they have septic tanks, the water just gets super infested. You can't They were telling us last night it rained a lot. Make sure you don't like you don't eat salads, or you don't drink anything with ice if you go outside of this yoga school, because in the yoga school they were using like filtered water. They said outside of this the water is going to be contaminated. Don't do it. You're going to get really sick. Then there was the smell of mold, which was really bad for me. I had actually a bad experience with that.
Mm.
um, Even in the yoga school, I was given a room at first that had pretty bad ventilation, and because it's humid for like 6 months in the year and the
Yeah.
ventilation was bad, there was this like constant mold smell in the room, and it was making my throat really itchy. I have, as you can tell, I'm still coughing because I had COVID like a month ago. And my respiratory system is super sensitive, and like I was feeling like swollen, and my throat was super itchy, and I
Mhm.
couldn't breathe. And I went to them and I said, like, I don't know what you can do, but please get me out of that room. I'll pay extra, but put me in a room that doesn't have mold, because otherwise for 3 weeks I cannot do any like breathing exercises,
Mhm.
because I can't even breathe at
Yeah.
night. I have to sleep. And eventually they gave me a better room, and that one was fine. It had ventilation, but then of course, because it had like uh, like ventilation in the sense that it had like a grate and holes in the wall. A lot of like insects and geckos kept coming in.
You
Okay,
can't. Oh my God. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, I'll take the animals,
Pick
as
your
long as,
poison. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, I'll take the animals. At least I can breathe, right?
Yeah.
So the smell of mold, and it wasn't just in that room. It was, like in many places. You went to bars, you went into like
Mhm.
shops, because it's just moldy, and because I mean, it's just humid and warm for so many months in the year. So that all also bothered me. Also, it's very touristic in the sense that
Mhm.
some things are expensive because they're specifically for
Yeah.
tourists. It's crowded, the prices, every every place that's famous, like every touristic site, unless you go super early in the morning, you're gonna have to wait in line for a picture. If you want to take a picture, you have to wait 30 minutes in line for people to take pictures. And it's this nice and pristine place, but when you have to wait in line with like 1,000 people behind you, it just kind of loses the charm. um
Yeah.
so
Uh, I think that's one of the things that I don't have so many pictures of famous landmarks from wherever I've traveled, because I don't have the patience. And I also,
yeah,
I mean, I traveled by myself quite a lot, and I'm like, I feel so awkward that I need to give someone to take a picture of me, and I want to pose in a specific way, and I feel awkward. People are looking at me like, I would rather not do it. So I would not have pictures in a lot of places, because I just, nope, not happening. Not
yeah.
I'm not
I didn't
that
even
kind of
go to some
person.
of these places. They were telling me like,
Yeah, there
oh
you go.
I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna go. I'm gonna go to one of the smaller ones that's not so famous, but like Rice Terraces. I went to something
Hmm.
smaller that was closer because I didn't want to waste
You were. Hmm.
so much time. So
So,
it's beautiful, but it has many downsides to it. So
hmm, I mean, like every other very famous touristic place in the end. As we are reaching almost the end of the episode, I am curious now to tell me, so, in a few words, what are your plans for the future regarding yoga teaching or learning more, getting more into that in depth of yoga? And then, how do you feel 1 year later? Was it all worth it?
for sure, it was worth it. Even though it kind of like turned my life upside down somehow. In the sense that when I came back home and when I went back to work, I was expecting that, oh, I'm going to go, I'm going to have this nice experience, I'm going to recharge and come back, and I'm going to be so much more refreshed. But when I came back, and, I had all these like conversations and I had learned so much, and it just felt like, oh, I'm this infinite being with I'm a spiritual being with a human experience. And then I have to go back on Zoom and discuss customer requirements. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? This infinite being on Zoom, it just doesn't work. And it was just a bit more, it was difficult to readjust. And I do want to, ever since I came back, I have been looking for, I don't want to lose touch with this like spiritual path. And I feel like I'm still, trying to go to retreats, trying to, read more, do more things. And I would like to, I'm looking into specialization courses, like maybe
Mhm.
meditation, specific meditation things, or things like Kundalini yoga or things like that to practice more. And when I feel like I have, when I'm confident with the things that I know, I will again try to do maybe like some test sessions again with friends. And then, slowly, if I feel like, okay, I can actually, I feel confident enough to I have enough knowledge and I can give people enough value, I will try to start teaching. But until then, I feel like I have a lot more learning to do myself, and I will try to find, I'm trying to find courses and things that I can do to solidify the knowledge that I already have and to build on it.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, can you see me? Because my image is stuck. I can hear you, but my
It's frozen.
image
I
is
can
stuck.
hear you too,
It's
but
frozen, right?
you're frozen.
But I can hear you fine. I can hear you fine. Um, okay, so I'm trying to start a new segment on the podcast. So for now, I'm calling it Inside Out Wonders. We'll see if it's gonna stick or not. But I've asked you and then also me to, if you have any recommendations of the month, to let me know. And do you want to go first, Andra?
Yeah, so you said it can be pretty much anything that I like. And
Anything? Hmm.
because I recently found this poem by Mary Oliver. It's called Invitation. And I'm just gonna say the part that I really like the most, because I feel like it it applies so well to the current state of affairs in the world. And
Sure.
but I really think it's worth reading because it's a beautiful poem. But what I like the most is this part. It says, "It is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in the broken world." And I just felt like
Yeah.
we are living in a broken world. And
Yeah. Um,
I just felt so grateful and privileged and sad in the same time when I read that part. And I that's why I feel like this poem "Invitation" by Mary Oliver is a good read
mhm.
for these days.
Yeah, and it is. I've watched a interview with Pink on 60 Minutes, and she was talking about basically coping because the world is really insane and dangerous, and just it can be very beautiful, but like it can be so insane. So uh, the way we cope is basically important, obviously, to not cope in a more damaging way, but to make it like just be happy that you're making it each day, you know basically as sane as you can. Yes, the world is indeed, I
it's
would
it's
say,
an
a
achievement.
scary place.
It's an achievement to, yeah, to keep going in a scary place, even if you can't change much, but just continue to be until you can change something. It's also an achievement.
Um, so my suggestion is I've been this month I've been to a book release by Jessie Reyes. Words of a Goat Princess is her first poem book, and she basically named every poem, and they also have a number. So I'm gonna say number 19, and the title of the book is Beach. I'm not gonna read the whole poem, even though it's kind of short, but I'm just gonna read a part of it. Uh, they yell, "Slow down." She walks a little faster. Her spine tenses. Bitch. She ignores them. Why don't you smile more? She is scared to smile when she's out alone because they think it's an invitation to be pursued, even though she just wants to make it home. So she lowers her gaze to the pavement, speeds up her pace, looks indifference into her face, and lets them call her a bitch, all in the name of hoping to make it home safe. And it also has a picture, but because the video is because the video doesn't work anymore. But the point is that there is a girl that she's wearing a hoodie and she has the keys in her between her knuckles, as we all women at some point in this life, I think we've done. We carry the keys kind of like a weapon on
Hmm.
our way back, and then she's wearing kind of like a crown that is famously known by Lady Liberty, like the statue in New York.
Yeah.
So it's like such a beautiful picture. It's like a drawing, actually. And yeah, I really love this poem because it's every single woman's nightmare, that she cannot exist in her own skin and just walk home. And I also want to mention that I read this poem to my husband, and he's kind of aware of how things go, especially as a Black person. But he was shocked to know. I was like, "Did you know that we do this with the keys?" And he's like, "No, what?" And I'm like, "I promise you, every
Oh yeah.
single woman at some point used the keys just as a weapon, just in case something happens." So,
Oh yeah, and there's two things to that. Like, first of all, yeah, you hold it, so it's like at least the illusion that you can have like a little weapon. And second of all, I always want to make sure that I take the shortest amount of time possible to open the door to get inside before anybody can reach me. So
mhm,
that's why I always keep the keys very like close, and like the specific key, even though I have like three, four keys, the one key that's like for my main front door, I like, yeah, I know the feel. You hold it
it's
there, hold on to that one key,
it's
so you don't.
legit one of my worst nightmares, and literal nightmares, as in I had like bad dreams about it, in which I'm getting home, I'm about to close the door and somebody puts their feet in, and they,
No.
I can't close the door. Like, I had proper nightmares about that. But I do
Mm-mm.
have to say, however, I did have, I mean, most days right now, obviously, if I go somewhere, I go with my husband, or if I'm not, he's at home, so he's not gonna drive me and drop me home, right? So before that, when I was dating, I did have a few guys that before dropping me, they would stay there until
Mhm.
I would get in. Not only that, but I also had Uber drivers who would do that. They
Oh,
would
that's
linger with their car there, and it's much appreciated. I have
yeah.
to, like, shout out to the
Oh, that's
men
really
who are doing that, because they understand. Let me
nice.
see her get in, and then I leave. So shout out to men who knew, because I've never asked them,
Mhm.
because I didn't think to ask them. It's just a
Yeah.
fear that I have. Why am I supposed to mention this? So
Yeah,
shout
yeah.
out to the men who know how to do that, just for to give a bit of a caution, for like safety net for women getting safely back home, I would say. Yeah, we went again over 1 hour, but we might need to do some editing because of the yeah, I don't know, the internet went crazy. It's probably my fault. But I want to thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your Bali experience with me and my listeners, our listeners. And is there anything else that you want to add at the end of this episode?
Um, no, just well, thank you for having me again. And I guess the lesson is, even though you do have some preconceptions, be ready, or at least be open to have them changed or broken apart. Don't just don't hold on to anything, basically, because you might get surprised. Like I said, you might make a new friend, you might see a place that's really nice and worth it. Or if you don't, at least you were open to learning something new. And if your preconception was reinforced, then it means you were right, and it's still a win.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that
at
is,
least,
yeah.
even if you have them, be open to like question it. So I
Mhm.
guess it worked for me.
For whoever is interested in finding Andra online, you can check out her YouTube channel, at Andrada Popandorca. It's I'm gonna put it in the episode description, and then also you can see it on the screen. And then for me, it's the same. It's my name. That is also my website, YouTube, at Alina I Grad. And I'm going to post the mini vlogs that I said in previous episode. I posted. I started. I didn't post it yet. Technically, I would have posted it by the time this episode comes out. It's difficult to think about timeline. um, but yes, what could we find on your channel, Andra? What is the plan?
Yeah, well, the plan, because so far I have many things that are kind of like all over the place. I have backpack reviews and shorts about different places that I've visited, and a few teachings from a lama from Nepal, Buddhist teachings. I will try to make more content related to maybe also meditation. Maybe I'll start having like little yoga nidra
Mhm.
recordings, like I was saying, because I kind of like that, and I prepared a few, and maybe I should make them available to the general public, because the ones that I did test with friends, people were
It
you know
worked.
yeah, it were people were they liked them.
Hmm.
And I would try to make more content related to the spiritual practices that I do, not so much for people to do the same, but for them to find out, like, I've been to this monastery, this is what you could find there. I did
Hmm.
this course, this is what I learned. So like little
Yeah,
things like that.
snippets of information from your
Basically, yes. Yeah.
experience. Hmm.
Hmm.
Sounds great. Okay, so that being said, I hope to see you and talk to you for the podcast next month. Next month, I'm not gonna say like let's not talk about 1 month and see
Oh
what
yeah, like
happens.
afterwards we'll just talk in like 10 minutes anyways.
Exactly. And I also have to mention that we recorded this way in advance. So if anything else changes and so on, we will address it in the next episode that we record together. That being said, have a lovely day, Andra. And I already had breakfast, so I'm gonna go ahead and continue my day basically.
Well, have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you as well. This concludes today's episode. Thank you for listening and for reviewing Traveling Inside Out. If you want to get in touch with me, send an email to podcast@alinaigrad.com. And remember, your outdoor journey begins with inner work. Until next time, bye.